For the longest time, Kenya has been battling with the issue of good governance and how to weed out corruption in the public service. But there is an institution whose mandate is to train company secretaries as well as ensure that boards of public companies are well managed and accountability as well as transparency is entrenched in these organizations. I'm talking about the Institute of Certified Secretaries. And to help us understand what this institution is doing to deepen transparencies as well as accountability in public institutions, I'm joined by FCS Jeremiah Karanja. He's the Chief Executive Officer at the Institute of Certified Secretaries. Thank you very much indeed, Karanja, for joining us.
Thank you.
I mean, you see, this is an institution that has been here since 1989. And the issues of accountability, transparency, corruption, as well as poor governance, they have been with us for the longest time. What is the role of your institution in ensuring that we deal with these challenges?
Thank you. Maybe just to explain who we are. The Institute of Certified Secretaries, our legal name or our full name is the Institute of Certified Public Secretaries of Kenya. We are created under an Act of Parliament, Cap 534 of the Laws of Kenya. And as you've correctly mentioned, we've been there since 1989. Our mandate is to promote good governance in both public and private institutions. Our members, called certified secretaries, work in various sectors of our economy, mostly in public sector and also private companies. In public sectors, if it's state corporations, they are referred to as corporation secretaries. We also have county public service boards, where each county public service board is supposed to have a secretary who is also the CEO to the board, and there they are referred to as board secretaries. In private companies, they are referred to as company secretaries, or in others, they are called corporate secretaries. For instance, here at the Institute, because we are not a company, we call our secretary corporate secretary. We also find them in SACCOs, in pension funds, and all that. So the Institute is a public body at the National Treasury. That is our home ministry. You have asked what we do in terms of entrenching good governance. And as mentioned, we derive our mandate from Cap 534, the Laws of Kenya. And we are supposed to promote professionalism, especially matters governance. And how we do that is that we regulate our members. We hold them accountable so that there are institutions which they are required to advise boards, senior management, and in general those institutions on matters governance. Should there be issues there, then we hold them into account through a disciplinary process. But also corporately as an institute, we undertake a number of activities to promote governance. Key among them is capacity building. For example, over the last several years, we have partnered with the State Corporations Advisory Committee, that is the Office of the President, to train boards of all state corporations in Kenya. Want to conduct inductions, but also to train them. We also support them in reviewing their governance instruments. You may be aware of a document called Mwongozo. Mwongozo is a code of governance for state corporations in Kenya. Actually, it was written in this very boardroom by the Institute on behalf of State Corporations Advisory Committee as well as Public Service Commission. So that is one of the areas in terms of building capacity to boards of state corporations. And we also engage with them in addition to like the ones we have been doing with the Office of the President. We bring them together, all of them together. But we also do one-on-one, whereby we get a state corporation who wants services on governance, and then we are able to capacity build them on the same.
And I like the fact that you're talking about the Mwongozo,
yes.
Which is a document that is supposed to guide how public institutions, boards are supposed to manage and how they're supposed to behave and the parameters within which they're supposed to operate in. But why do we still have cases of bad governance and corruption in public-owned institutions?
It's not a matter of that people don't know, but one has to make a decision. Unfortunately, in this country, most of us have not chosen the narrow path. We want to take a path which is wide and therefore a must, because I could say the biggest challenge we have in this country is only one. Everything that we do is based on personal gain, most of us, not everyone, but a number of us. And therefore, despite being appointed as a board member in a state corporation, instead of looking at the interests of the organization as a whole, sometimes I'll go there looking at how can I benefit myself. And unfortunately, you also find some of these people have what I would call shadow directors who has planted you there for some other motives which are not very clear. Yeah, that is one of the challenges that we have, what I would call political patronage, where you find board members, some of them are well-meaning, but maybe because of those political influences, there are things that forces them to do what they know is not the right thing to do. Yeah.
You see, when you look at some of your mandates, this include the board inductions, preparing board papers, governance audit, board evaluation, risk governance, codes of governance, among many others. And so when you're conducting your operations, what are some of the biggest challenges that you encounter with public boards?
I think the biggest challenge is what I'll call conflict of interest, that you have people serving in public sector, but who are grossly conflicted. They are there to advance their personal agenda. And that conflict has not been properly managed. And therefore, somebody comes to an organization to serve as a board member, but the whole motivation is to influence the procurement, just to give an example, so that it can go this or this way, either to benefit their own personal companies or their friends, or even this shadow director I'm referring to, somebody who is behind the scenes, who has planted you there so that you can ensure that whatever decision that is made in that organization is for the benefit of this other person.
There's lack of patriotism. Let's set the record straight. I mean, the business of appointing board members is vested on the cabinet secretary, yes, or the minister.
Yes.
The business of appointing the chair of the board rests with the president. So if we were to address that problem, how then should we go about it?
There have been discussions on that particular subject matter. And that matter has even been litigated in the High Court. In terms of, when you read Muogozo had foreseen a situation where even board members will be competitively appointed. We are yet to get there. And I think that is one of the areas that we need to focus. How do we ensure that board members are competitively appointed based on merit? Of course, even the cabinet secretary may not in person know all these board members. What happens, these are political appointments, and political appointments are subject to political negotiations. So there is who is negotiating immediately after the elections, who is negotiating what to get in which board. And it's as a result of those political negotiations where you find yourself in that particular position, because there are people in boards who are there to advance a certain political agenda based on who negotiated their position.
we cannot just sit here and say that we cannot have political appointees who will go on and serve the nation. There is that possibility. But then, even if you're a political appointee, how then do we make you serve the company and serve the country?
And by the way, as you have correctly mentioned, there is nothing wrong even in having political appointees. So I'm not trying to say that is necessarily the process. There is nothing wrong in having, because government is a political entity and we cannot remove, and that is the same way everywhere in the world.
Even governing is a political process.
Yes, even governance itself is a political process. So you cannot remove politics from any of these processes. The issue is, as individual, at individual level, whether it's the person appointing or the person being appointed, the emphasis should be, are we appointing the person based on merit? If the person has not performed, was in a private sector which collapsed, a company which collapsed because they mismanaged, or was in another state corporation, and we know they have so many corruption scandals, then you appoint them in a board. Of course, what do you expect to happen in that board? So the issue is not the process to me. The issue is, one, the appointing authority need a process of vetting who gets to the board.
We've had situations whereby public-owned enterprises have collapsed. And I'll give an example of Uchumi Supermarkets. Yes. I'll give another example of Kenatco, among many others. And when you listen to analysis from different stakeholders, they will blame it on poor governance, collusion between the board members and management to swindle companies. And then you ask yourself, most of the CEOs that we see and board members, they are trained and they are inducted by institutions like ISPAC, ICS. So what kind of safeguards do we need to put in place to ensure that the people that we put in companies, public companies, they meet the required integrity levels, they uphold high ethical standards, and they're transparent and accountable?
You know, as a country, and the other day on Saturday, I was listening to the Gen Zs on X Space, and they were engaging Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission on what are they doing on matters corruption. And EACC highlighted a fundamental point and said, look here, in the run-up to 2022 elections, we flagged more than 100 people and said these are not worth of being appointed in public offices because they're already having corruption scandals. Now, of course, what people would argue is that they have a competent court has not declared that they are guilty and therefore they are innocent. But TSCC told them, look, these are people, either they have cases pending in courts and therefore they are not worth, in terms of ethical study, they cannot pass that mark. But as Kenyans, we went ahead and elected almost all those that had already been flagged. And that is the beginning point, because the society itself, right from the Wajiko we are talking about, to the ones that are educated like ourselves, who should know better, the ones in offices, all of us, we have not appreciated the value of ethics. And therefore, we go ahead to put people in offices. We put hyenas to be in charge of sheep. What do you expect?
Put away the integrity questions.
Yes, you cannot blame the hyena because you are the one who have put it to be in charge of sheep. So that is something we need to change right from our policy framework, that is our laws and regulations, but also even in terms of our attitude towards ethics.
You are an organization with about 4,000 members. Yes. Where are they, and what do they see when they see people of questionable integrity being put into positions of leadership? Where are they when public-owned enterprises are being swindled? We don't get to hear from them.
Yes, the role of the corporation secretary or the company secretary or the board secretary, I agree with you. One of the fundamental roles is to promote good governance in the organization. And they do so by, one, advising the board and advising the top management on matters governance. However, and this is one of the issues that we have raised even with the EACC, you find their role is purely advisory to the boards. Then you find, for instance, we have, and this was introduced during the Kebaki era, we have people we call integrity officers who are supposed to be the liaison persons between the organization and EACC and other entities, such that you find the role of the secretary sometimes is confined to the boardroom. One of the legal reviews that we are seeking to have is to remove confining that role to the boardroom and to be just purely advise the board and your work is there. We need to be in a situation whereby this, because their title, actually they are the governance profession. That's what they have been trained on. And that's what we regulate them on. We expect them to hold the organization, the board, and everybody accountable. And therefore, we are seeking to have the laws reviewed so that they have a role in terms of the constitutional principles of values of ethics and integrity. The ones that the Public Service Commission reports on, they should be the liaison people. They should be able to liaise with the EACC and other oversight of the organizations on matters specifically governance, ethics, and integrity. Because currently, when you look at the JD of a corporation secretary, you find they are told to advise the board on governance. So once you have given your advice, you know an advice is just an advice. You have put in writing, you have given the board, this is the position. The board is the decision maker.
They still have the final say.
They still have the final say. But what is the recourse for whatever you had given? That needs to find itself somewhere. And that is part of the legal reviews that we are proposing, even within the mainstream government. Because currently that role of the governance professionals is only in corporate entities, like state corporations within the public sector. What we are saying, we need even in the mainstream government to mainstream the governance profession, such that even in a ministry department, you have the ethics, the integrity officers, the governance officers, and who are members of this governance profession, so that they don't only benefit on matters of capacity building and continuous professional development on matters governance, but they also held accountable by the institute. There is this and this happening in your department. Can you show evidence that you actually reported? So you're able to be held professionally accountable. But also to mention, the institute has also over the years taken action against some of our members who have been involved in some of those ethical malpractices. In accordance to our act, the one that is currently in place, although it's under review, what we are supposed to do is to recommend to the registration board, either for degazettement or other disciplinary measures, and which the institute over the years have done. So it's something that is, but we need to increase also this pool of these governance professionals, because we are currently a few hundreds shy of 5,000. Still, that is a very small number to satisfy the entire nation. So one of the things actually we are working on is also to increase that number, even as we work.
What is the optimum number that we should have as a country?
When I look at other jurisdictions, I think the best place where it's very well developed is countries like India. Of course, I know also their populations is quite huge, but for them, they're also in hundreds of thousands in terms of the certified secretaries. And they play a very pertinent role. Actually, under the Companies Act of India, every organization, especially the public entities, including the ones listed, they are supposed to comply with, there they call them secretarial standards, here we call them governance standards. They are supposed to comply with secretarial standards as developed by the Institute of Company Secretaries of India. So that's where we are looking at in terms of the legal review, so that organizations, it's not just a recommendation, because our governance standards currently, they don't necessarily have the force of law. What we do is just good recommendations that we give. We have governance standards on quite a number of... Goodwill basis. Yes, goodwill basis. So we are seeking to have that, have a legal, a force of law, so that organizations can actually be held accountable based on the same.
You see, when you look at the history of company secretaries, I mean, it has evolved from note takers, or what they used to be referred to as the servants of the boards. Yes. But now they're even supposed to offer legal advisories to boards. They are supposed to offer financial advisories to boards. But then their mandate just ends there, to offer advice to the board. So how then do we make their advices, professional as they are, to count? One
of the ways to make that advice count is actually having the governance standards which are published by the Institute to have a force of law. And therefore, as the company secretary or corporation secretary of an entity, I'll be telling my organization, which I serve, that you need to comply with governance standard 001 on the management of conflict of interest, or how meetings of the board should be handled. And failure to do so, then the organization is liable for ABCD. That way, as a board secretary, my advice is not just based on good advisory, but is actually something that counts. But also, secondly, is through one of the processes that our members carry out, what we call the governance audits. And governance audits basically is a process where a certified secretary, a practicing certified secretary who is accredited by the Institute, goes out to an organization and assesses the governance structures, policies, and practices in that organization, and is able to list issues that need improvement, what the organization is doing well, what can be done better, and all that. Now, once that governance audit report normally is given to the board, currently still is advisory, we will give the board and tell them this is what we recommend. But it can also be a basis should there be a dispute in future. It can also be a basis upon which either the shareholders, if it's a listed companies, can take the board to task on. This is what the governance auditor recommended we need. What did you do on this? For public entities, it could be a basis upon which the Auditor General, through the statutory audit, could also lift some of those issues for highlighting even to Parliament. So those are some of the ways that I would think that advice can actually have a force of law.
As an institution, do you have the necessary or the required muscle to train senior persons in the public service on matters of integrity, ethics, and good governance?
Yes, and we have done it over the years. Right now, like this year, we have concentrated a lot. Last year and this year, we have concentrated a lot on boards of state corporations. I would want to almost believe that there is not even a single organization. There could be a few pockets of one or two board members who we have not trained, because maybe when they were appointed, but there is no even a single institutions, public entities that we have not trained and we have not taken through what their requirements for good governance practices. And therefore, that's why you heard me say, it's just like a church. You keep repeating. Actually, in the book, good book I referred to, called the Bible, there is even a book called Deuteronomy. In Kiswahili, it's called Kumbukumbu la Torati. People are just being reminded of the same commandments that they are given. So this is a continuous process that we have to keep on reminding people of their expectations.
Before I let you go, what do you see is going to be the future of company secretaries in Kenya?
Number one, there is all these issues of technology, and key among them, artificial intelligence. And you see today, if we are holding a meeting with you, I don't require anybody even to take minutes, because I'll just have AI. By the end of the meeting, AI will generate for me minutes, and they will actually be very perfect because they don't have any error. So AI has brought a good disruption to some of the functions of what traditionally used to be done by CS. Number two, the issue of automation. For example, a few years ago, for you to register in a company in this country, you had to go through a company secretary because it was actually a requirement. You don't require that today. With the automation of the business registration service, anybody can log into their e-citizen and they're able to register a company. And therefore, what I'm trying to say is what used to be the traditional role of a company secretary, as we knew it then, has over time been taken over by technology. And therefore, the company secretary of today and the future is not necessarily those clerical and those compliance issues. The company secretary of the future is a company secretary who will deal primarily on matters governance advisory, primarily on matters issues of boardroom dynamics, because those are personality issues. You have to see how to manage the board, issues of emotional intelligence within the boardroom. So we are looking at a company secretary who is going beyond the mere clerical issues. Have you complied with A, B, C, D? We are looking at a company secretary who is a board advisor. We call the company secretary today the trusted friend of the board, because he or she is not only the keeper of board secrets, but is the person who is supposed to advise the board and guide the board on matters governance. So the future for the profession is bright. It's only that it is evolving. It's moving from the clerical, what you referred to as earlier, that person who was known to just take minutes in a board meeting, who was there to be seen and not to be heard. The company secretary of today is expected in a board meeting to participate. While the board members are giving their contributions, the company secretary of today is expected also to contribute. So in terms of the knowledge, is expected to have wide knowledge in terms of strategy and all other matters, so that they can give board advice, which will enable the organization to move forward.
Very good. Anything else?
I think the other thing I would conclude by saying is that the Institute has over the years partnered with public, private, and civil society institutions to promote governance. Among the many areas that I mentioned, for instance, Muogozo and all the other things, and we still remain available to support, including the public sector, all state corporations, and even other public sector institutions who are not state corporations. We still remain available for purposes of capacity building, for purposes of providing governance advisory. We receive a number of requests from especially public sector institutions asking us to advise them on various governance issues. Those are services which we offer free of charge as part of what we give to the society. And therefore, we remain to be a key partner to the government to support on matters governance, including on the current issues, governance challenges that are facing the country. We are available to support the government to moving this country forward.
Very good. Jeremiah Karanja, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Inside the Government and, of course, for sharing with us your insight.
Thank you.
Very good. I mean, we've been discussing the issues around good governance, corruption, as well as integrity in the public service. And FCS Jeremiah Karanja, the Chief Executive Officer at the Institute of Certified Secretaries, has been gracious enough to guide us on this conversation. My name is O'Brien Kimani. You have been watching Inside Government. Thank you for your time. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.